All right, we're live. All right. We are now at episode 48 of Beyond the CMS. Thanks for everyone for making time out during their lunch on Thursday on Eastern time, a little early on the West Coast. The whole idea here is to chat about content trends in content platform systems, content operations, just have some grassroots conversation and ask me anything format. So if you're tuning in right now, feel free to leave a comment on LinkedIn, and we actually see it on the interface here in the show. And if you're watching this in the future, leave us a link on YouTube or wherever you've seen this, or send us an email and we'll be happy to get back to you. Joel, you've been on the show a few times before. It's a real pleasure always to get your insights and ideas in and around the world of content. You're the CTO at Agility CMS, of our favorite CMSs, and one that we've been using since the beginning of time almost, when we look back. Thanks for joining us today and making time to share some of your ideas.
Yeah, it's always great to chat, man. So many things are happening, and yet so many things are the same. So it's always good to catch up.
It is true. Well, why don't we start off and just assume that a lot of folks listening may not know anything about Agility. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the product and a bit of its history and your role over there?
Yeah, so I've been with Agility for 21 years. The company has been around for a couple of years more than that. Actually, our anniversary is coming up. I can't remember if it's the 23rd or 24th anniversary of Agility being a company. We started off as an agency, though, building like web applications and websites. John Voight started it with Mike Assad, his partner at the time. I've been around since we started essentially having a CMS product that we were using to build websites on. And in 2018, we went 100% SaaS, and we're no longer implementing websites as an agency, but just providing the headless CMS product, headquartered here in Canada, and global customer base, and sort of like growing pretty fast with that customer base among a real diverse set of customers. I think we fit best in the sort of small to medium enterprise space with customers like we have Cineplex here in Canada. We have a few Scotiabank sites as well. A lot of different things in there, but we also have like some school boards or some school board sites that work really well. And you and I just talked about some of the higher education folks that we've got on the platform and have been on the platform for a long time. Interesting one, we're coming up to the 20th anniversary of Cineplex being on Agility.
Right on.
Really exciting. Yeah. So Cineplex.com and all of their properties for the Rec Room, Palladium, and all the different things that they have, they're all on Agility, which is amazing.
Kind of talks to the power of Agility. And maybe I'll just kind of set you up to answer some questions. But Agility CMS, also, maybe I should introduce myself. I'm Chris from Dotfusion. We build on Agility, large scale, mid to large enterprise websites, from manufacturing to commercial real estate, really across the board. Not only is the tool accepted and used globally, but there is an emphasis on kind of Canadian data sovereignty, and we love Agility as a Canadian product as well. So anyone listening, I really recommend that you reach out to Joel and the team over at Agility, especially being in Canada is important for your data infrastructure. But Joel, maybe tell me a little bit about Agility, its architecture, and I've just got to ask you for your definition again of headless for my inventory of quotes.
Sure. I mean, I would say headless CMS is like, there's a bunch of different terms that it could be the same as. So API driven, decoupled is another one where like your data, your content data is delivered via an API. So there's like this disconnect between where your website or your app is hosted and compared to where your content is hosted. And the net effect of that is really cool because it means that your site usually is a lot faster, it's a lot more secure, and it's a lot easier to build things, because you don't necessarily have to build a website, you can build an app, you can always do all these other things, or you can build one thing to get started and then have it expand over time, either into multiple properties or multiple different departments of your company. So it's a really nice way to kind of quickly get something solved. And a lot of the times that's how we get in the door with the company. That's definitely what happened with like a Scotiabank, where we don't have all of Scotiabank's websites. We have like 5 or 6 of their different country websites from the Latin American companies that they purchased. But it was really quick to set up those sites and build those build those out without having to completely reinvent everything within that, pretty large organization. So I'd say headless is like the agile, that's why we call ourselves Agility, sort of agile, nimble way to work with content and to get stuff done really fast.
Yeah, and for folks who don't know, we've got a great case study where I think we've moved the first Canadian place, Brookfield Properties website, into 3 different generations, but all with Agility at the back end. So when you have a kind of a headless situation, you can continue to change the presentation of your content without ever having to change the back end. So it's a great just choice, I guess, for keeping all of that content in one place, especially the stuff that kind of lasts forever and persists. Another reason we love headless and Agility is for its ability for us to build on Next and React, which produces very discoverable pages. The Dotfusion website, for example, is on Agility. And if you type in best headless agency in Canada, we come up first. And there's many reasons for that, of which one is luck. But there are also some pragmatic scientific things that we've been doing. And Agility has an infrastructural part of that equation, as does the kind of formatting and the structure of data. Do you want to chat a little bit about what your observations are around discoverable content and helping your clients get discovered because they're on Agility? And I can attest that that is a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, we have always talked about SEO as being one of the top strategies and top, like discoverability for that. But AEO is kind of a new term to be discovered by AI agents as well as search crawlers. And so like your content needs to be discoverable by those search crawlers, by the agents that are building their initial, like every time there's a new version of, Claude or ChatGPT, these things, they're going to go and like build their knowledge base. You want to get crawled as part of that knowledge base so that your content is part of the core knowledge for an agent. But then that agent is going to do research after that. And so it's going to reach out and talk to your website as an agent, like basically do web searches. So it's going to be like not necessarily Google's crawler, which is hitting it fairly often just as part of their crawl, but this is someone doing like web research through an agent. And so the person isn't hitting your website yet. It's the person's agent hitting your website. So it's got to come back with the right knowledge from that, which means the discoverability from like a programmatic side of your content is really important. And that's why structuring your content in a headless CMS is really important and actually really easy to do if you just kind of know the hoops to jump through. But then, of course, you still want to build a beautiful website for humans to actually look at, right? So it needs to be fast and have all those things so that when that person actually comes to your website, that they're going to have a good experience. And what we're finding is that we actually have fewer people going to a lot of websites now because more people are spending time in AI agents, but the people that do land on your website are actually way more likely to convert and to actually be interested in that content. And so it's been an interesting sort of like up and down of the traffic, but the traffic is much more valuable when you do get someone that does come to your website. So you really want to capture their attention.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we could talk for a while on structured data, but just thinking while folks are listening to a bit of this thread that we're on here, can you just discuss a little bit about what's the difference between metadata and schema data? We are typically working with CMOs who are not necessarily that technical and have way better things to do than to understand all of this. But can you explain that in kind of layman's terms and how Agility, I guess, enables the publishing of that type of content?
So from a very high level, if you think of SEO and metadata, those are the things that were really the metadata of a page. So like it's going to be like its title and its description, and maybe even like the open graph image is a little bit more on the social side of things. But those are the things that when you search for content, the things that show up in a Google search, right? It's usually your title and your meta description. Sometimes it'll show something from the page's content too, if it matched up something in the content, and depending on what search agent you're using. But those are that's the metadata for pages. Like it usually comes down to that the meta title and the meta description, which are very like open-ended fields. They're just text. They don't have a lot of structure. But you can also add a much tighter schema onto each page that tells of the program. So whoever's crawling that page tells the agent or the crawler exactly what that data is. And Google kind of led the way on this. It's called JSON-LD. So it's like it used to call it rich snippets. It's moved on. I can't remember the exact name now, but essentially it's like a JSON schema for your page. So you can tell an agent, hey, this is an event page and it's for something that has, these two hosts. It's going to be Chris and Joel. Beyond the podcast is this time. So if you have an event page for your, that's part of this something like that's going to happen at a certain time with certain people, you can have all that structure in there. You can even have a carousel of images that represent that. If you have an article page, there's a specific article schema. So these are well-known schemas that are out there to say, okay, if you have this kind of content, these are the standard pieces of sort of text or data that need to be in there. With a headless CMS, it means that you can translate your structured content to that schema automatically, and you could provide tools right in product. So Agility has tools right in the product to kind of help this, and we're going to give more to do more stuff for AEO. That's one of the things that is coming down the pipe in the not too distant future, is like more AEO and SEO tools.
Super cool. We were chatting a little bit earlier, and you had mentioned that it was Agility's decision not to pack too much AI inside Agility, which is a bit contrary to some of the other CMSs out there. But I thought you had just a really good reason, and I'd be interested to know a little bit more about your take on where AI fits into the content operations of an organization and its platform.
What we have observed at Agility is that many organizations are figuring out their AI strategy right now with a particular agent. Most folks are either using Claude, which I really like, or Copilot. Some are using Gemini. And there's a couple others that are in there, but those are the sort of the three big sort of platforms. And they all have coding agents that you can use, and they all have sort of non-technical sides of their agent too. So stuff for like regular users to use. Organizations are figuring out how to use those sort of foundational pieces of their AI puzzle. How you fit into that does not work very well if you have another agent in your product that you want them to use, right? Because now they got to go to this other place. And I think there's a place for that at some point, potentially. But I think there's a much more value is to say, okay, you have all of these things in your digital ecosystem, and Agility is one of them. How can we get Agility into Claude for you? And that's what we're spending the most time on now with folks, is basically showing them from a development point of view, how do you cut down your development time from hours and hours to work on something to like a lot less time, minutes, to build this thing that used to take an hour or a day. And then, but also get rid of the copy and paste. People are copying and pasting out of Word or Google documents into like fields in Agility. And those fields are super powerful because they lead to schema-driven stuff on your website. So it's super valuable. How can we use AI to get stuff out of those unstructured documents, which are what people use to create, and into the structured pieces of Agility, while at the same time, maybe we're going to translate to different locales at the same time using AI, or follow brand guidelines and ask a bunch of questions about the content if there's some problem with it. Maybe, hey, we don't use the word patient, we use the word customer, that kind of thing. All of those guidelines, which can be really hard to follow, you can do those as part of a content pipeline. So setting that up for customers, helping them either migrate content from old things or just do the regular content pipeline for stuff has been really, really valuable. And they can do that as part of their existing AI, like their existing AI strategy. They don't have to have a whole new strategy just for how do we use Agility's agents.
Interesting. And I love that you tapped onto the I don't want to cut and paste idea. That's been the feedback of the year over here at Dotfusion, is like, all right, there must be a way to solve for this.
Yeah.
And how you solve for this is, one major option is through an MCP server.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, I think you've gone through a couple evolutions of the Agility MCP server. Maybe just tell us where you've been and where you're at and where you're going.
Yeah, so we initially built our MCP server more to help with developers, so that when I'm building a website, I don't have to jump back and forth into Agility to like update content models and component models, and to like add all of the interesting things that are necessary, like making sure all the field labels are good and everything has like a field description, all that extra stuff that developers hate doing. So that was the first thing, is just be able to create models, and that works amazing. But what we discovered is that people actually want to create content in Agility too. This is not from the developer side of things, although developers want to do it too, but just like, how do I just get content in there? And a lot of times, like, I want to be able to translate it, follow brand guidelines, all that sort of stuff. So we built pretty amazing sort of content pipeline into it. And it's not just one piece of content at a time. You can actually send through the MCP server up to 250 content items at a time. So if I have a folder of Word documents, drop them into Claude and it just goes through them like nothing. Or even importing an existing site, point Claude at your existing site. Hey, I have a WordPress site. I don't want to do anything with it. Go through all my pages and just add them into Agility. That works freaking amazing. It's crazy how much time that used to take, copying and pasting or trying to write a routine. So that was sort of like phase two. It blows my mind how much people were willing to let Claude do all that work for them. I thought, oh no, people want to have more control over their content. Turns out they don't. They just want to get work done. So and they're okay with it being, let's get it on the website, and so we can look at it and then we can review it after there. And so we held off on doing publish and delete operations and unpublish and approve and all that sort of stuff. Thought, okay, people are going to want to go in the CMS to actually do those manual things. Turns out they want to automate that too. And so based on customer demand, we added recently in the last, 2 or 3 weeks, the ability to publish, unpublish, delete content and pages in bulk as part of the MCP server. So you can write content workflows now that do the whole gamut of essentially creating your website or your apps, putting the content into Agility for you, and approving that content and publishing it out onto your, your different channels that you've got it. So all of that stuff can be automated through, and Claude is by far the best at it. But every one of those clients, whether it be Gemini, ChatGPT, or Copilot, they can all hook into the MCP servers and use them to differing amounts. Claude, I think, is the best at it, but the other ones work pretty well too.
And it's Agility has kind of a marketplace of connectors and integrations. Do you find something in that marketplace for connectors to AI stuff, or is this something that you connect separately? Asking from kind of a lay person's perspective, how do I get Claude to connect to Agility?
Yeah, so mcp.agilitycms.com is its own mini website that we've got set up that has the instructions on there for how to connect Agility to your agent. So we've got all the different ones that I just mentioned and a few others, like if you're using Cursor for development, there's specific ways to do that to get it in there. And some of them are like one-click installs. So what that does is essentially adds the Agility connector into your AI agent. Awesome. There are a gazillion amount of connectors out there to connect into everything. For instance, there's a HubSpot connector that'll go and query your HubSpot data. There's one that'll query your commerce data. There's everything that can do everything. There's tens of thousands of MCP servers out there. Not all of them are that good, because you really have to work with, the use cases that people want to work with. And so, like, for instance, I had high hopes for Figma's MCP server.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
It's basically slightly less good than taking screenshots from Figma, as far as I've used it lately. So like, I don't love that one very much. It does work, but like Chrome has a pretty good MCP server that works really well. So you can like control Chrome as a browser. And so there's all kinds of ways to kind of automate how you can help your agent to go and do stuff. And there's lots of different things now, like OpenClaw and other things that are trying to automate your computer. That's sort of one aspect of it. I think the really powerful version of these things is stuff where you don't have to be there. It doesn't have to be on your computer. This can be something where like maybe it should work from Claude. I have Claude on my phone, my iPad, and my laptop. I can actually create blog posts on my personal blog from my phone just by, I narrate into it. And like I was just in Scotland, did this for my trip because there's like amazing views from these hikes we were doing. Take some pictures. I'm like, I'm going to blog about this right now. And so I would just open Claude, narrate what was happening, upload a few of my images and say, go. And this was in what's called a Claude project, which I had basically tuned to my blog to say, hey, send it to this Agility instance. I want to create blog posts and, figure out from my content what category it should be and all that sort of stuff, and then create nice galleries for the images that I put up. So it has all that as a Claude project, which is kind of like a skill, does it automatically, and then now it can publish automatically too. At the time, we didn't have our publish capability there, so I had to manually publish, but now it will publish it as well. So pretty amazing set of capabilities. And the more MCP servers you have, the more capabilities you have. It does slow down your agent to a certain extent. So I think people are now understanding, okay, I got to pick and choose which connectors I'm going to use in Claude and what I'm going to get the most value out of. But as they fine tune that stuff, it's amazing how fast these workflows get. So, where it might have taken, we call this the content supply chain. So content supply chains in an enterprise typically have between 15 and 19 steps, which is insane. How can we get that to like maybe 10 steps, maybe even 6 steps? So it's only the people that are the bottlenecks, and we don't have all of these technological bottlenecks now. AI can really help with that, sort of reducing the content supply chain and automating that pipeline.
Yeah, we have a shared client. It's a rural telco out in Manitoba. And we were trying to solve for the amount of cutting and pasting they were doing. And we looked into a typical blog post or a news post. It can have up to 17 or 18 different attributes to it. Read time, author, like schema data, meta, and that's a lot of stuff to be porting over in 2 different screens. So we kind of love that idea of kind of streamlining all of this as your AI model becomes your real interface to everything. And I love that idea because we've got kind of a research agent that's writing all of our posts, goes through a human to kind of tune it. And it's an interesting conversation, maybe if I tune AI for 3 weeks so it knows me, then at what point in time is the writing sort of from me anyway? It's saving me the time. It's kind of a fuzzy zone because I've got things pretty tuned that it knows kind of my preferences very well and writing style. That's just a good discussion, I guess.
Well, I think the term for that, by the way, is called cognitive offload. It's like instead of using a rock to hammer in a nail, you use an actual hammer, and it gets a lot easier. Now I don't have to focus so much, and it's actually a lot easier. And eventually I just get an air nailer and I don't even think about it. The nail just goes in. So why wouldn't I use the air nailer to hammer in nails a lot faster if I'm building a house, right? If I have a rock, this is how we always did it, but I'm going to hit my hand on that rock and it's going to hurt. It's going to be super slow. So why wouldn't you use the tool if it's providing value? Now, if I have a whole new hammer and the house falls down after that, probably not a very good hammer. Yes. So I think the question should be, is it AI slop that it's creating? Is that content, does it actually have any value? And is it at the same level of value as stuff that you typed out? Probably you just can't type fast enough to get it. Once you've got it trained enough and once you've got it tuned, you can't type that fast, Chris. You can have ideas that fast. You can't type that fast. I say the same thing to developers who are sort of holding back on using coding tools. I'm like, okay, I understand that you have your craft, right? But you can't type that fast. You can't even talk that fast to get out the ideas. You can have ideas a lot faster. So think about the ideas and less about how fast you can type them out. It's a tool for getting your ideas out there, and ideas can come from so many places. Our creativity should not be bounded by technology. It should only be bounded by how many ideas we can have. And man, I know you can have a lot of ideas. And I think a lot of people have sort of curtailed their creativity because of the tools that they have. And AI should be able to let that come out. I've changed my mind on AI several times, but I've seen it help people become so more creative as a creative outlet, because their ideas and what those are capable of now have this tool to take them to the world in a much quicker way.
Yeah, it's almost like more Lego. Right on, let's do it. And just a bit of a hack on how I create content is I'll have an idea that I'll kind of rebound with AI. We're kind of a cloud shop here, but with whatever. And then its pattern is to interview me back on what's important about it. What is my particularly unique angle? What would I say if I was talking to a pal out on a bike ride about it? It's colloquializing the mission of writing the content.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I acknowledge I'm not here, saying that I'm writing something with my best craft of creative writing skills, but it's my best craft of getting AI to do what I want.
Right.
And so I got this kind of interesting relationship, and a lot of chatting back and forth, of course. You had just mentioned in passing, staying on this MCP server idea, that you had dabbled with a bit of like a MCP UI in Agility. And not all kind of product ideas come to light, but I really love the idea that you're constantly experimenting and trying new things. Do you want to just talk little bit about that? Because I don't think people really even know what that idea is.
Well, MCP UI is the idea that after you connect like an MCP server, that the MCP, that server could actually serve up some user interface inside like Claude, for instance. And you haven't seen this take off, but like when ChatGPT was trying to do, I think they called it apps inside ChatGPT, which is essentially the same protocol, slightly different. And I think they're trying to unify that between Anthropic and OpenAI's implementations now, as well as Gemini, to get this to work. So that, and it has not taken off very well, because the first implementations were for retail and people didn't really like the idea of buying things. But the idea would be that if I'm in my agent and it decides to connect to something like Agility, or, so like my thought was, okay, when we are getting some content in there, maybe we could surface up a little piece of UI to say, yeah, I want to publish my content. Turns out people don't even want to have to click anything. They just want it to happen. And also agents are pretty good at asking for permission for things anyway. So that wasn't really useful, but I think it could be useful for other pieces of user interface potentially, where I need to maybe like maybe it's for uploading files specifically, or for doing a little preview or something. I'm not quite sure. I was really big on it as a thing, but I actually don't think MCP UI is going to be that big a deal unless there are, specific use cases that's really for. Interestingly enough, the other day for ChatGPT, I used the Apple Music app, which is essentially an MCP UI, to create a playlist. I said, hey, I want a playlist from things from the 70s, 80s, and 90s of these kinds of songs. But it only allowed me to do 25 songs, and it was okay, but it was an interesting branded interface. I thought, okay, this could be useful. I haven't used it since. But so I think there's an idea there. The idea was so that people would buy stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the trust, we just got, people like my mom to be able to buy things on a website. Buying them inside ChatGPT is a little less, not quite there yet. So I think the e-commerce thing didn't quite happen. Whether it will, I'm not sure. Cognitive offload we're great with. Financial offload, not quite so much, not yet.
Right, easy, not quite yet, eh?
Yeah.
Another idea just from some of the notes that I've taken that I thought were like particularly interesting discussion ideas was you were talking about the complexity. Well, I guess DevOps is complicated, and now you're experiencing feedback from your customers that they're also starting to create rather complex content ops. And Agility is able to kind of be in the midst of all of that as the publishing kind of conduit to things. Do you want to just chat a little bit about what you're seeing out there?
Yeah, so there's a continuum, I think, of complexity. Right from, we have one website, it's a school board, and they have like one instance of Agility, and like each folder of their sitemap is a different school. So like the most simple, they have, 3 people are editing all this content, very small team. They have one deployed website for all of these, like website code for all of these things, almost no DevOps, nothing. That's like as basic as it gets. All the way up to, there's a lot of folks out there that'll have like one instance of Agility and like a sandbox, but they'll have a lot of pretty good DevOps workflows, where they'll have like a dev, staging, UAT, and production code environment for DevOps. But you only need to have one instance or maybe 2 instances of Agility to do that. And we've got a docs page that sort of shows all these flows. But then on the far end of it, you get folks that have content that is in all those environments as well. And a lot of the times, this is when our customer who owns that content, actually they are delivering a product as well, that another customer is going to and then use as a B2B kind of a thing. So it's like a B2B2B situation. So they have that content, and it's often in regulated industries. It needs to actually have like sign off between different environments. This is like, and oftentimes it's matched up not just to websites, but to apps or both as well. So they've got, this regulated industry. They need to have sign off on the code moving up to different environments, but also on the content as well that moves with that. And so you can use our CLI to do that. Pretty complicated. It's a little tricky to get it all set up.
What is a CLI? Sorry.
Oh, command line interface.
Noted.
So, yeah. So in the same way that they'll use a DevOps pipeline to push their code to different workflows, they'll invoke the CLI to get the content to move to different environments using that same or similar workflows.
Cool.
What's kind of neat is when you do DevOps, it keeps all the logs of everything for you that come out of like that command line interface. So it's instead of someone doing it on a terminal on their computer, which you could do, but in this case, it's like a GitHub action or an Azure DevOps action that's invoking this and can essentially moving content from one instance to another, so that somebody can sign off on it to say, yep, that's good to have on QA. Let's move it to UAT or to customer acceptance testing or whatever they're going to call their next environment, all the way up to prod. So it's, you've got customers that are doing it the most basic way, and they're like, yeah, quick, get it on the website. We don't want to wait any longer. To, okay, we got to go through these. It's got to jump through all these hoops with the code that it's intended to go with, so that we can ensure that everything is like hunky dory all the way along.
Crap! Like time goes by so fast once we get rolling. I've just got one more note there on this idea of contents ops through CLI. One of the many challenges of pure MCP content ops is there is no log. It's just magically there. Great in most cases, but as you edge into the more enterprise use cases, financial data, gated content, stuff where much more governance is required, I think this is a great concept that I haven't heard anyone else talking about, is managing content ops through kind of a more robust pipe than I kind of call it the magic version, which is great. But that's also great to know. And for folks in the kind of mid to large enterprise space listening, this is another great reason to choose Agility. I've got to bounce. We're a little bit over time. Thanks to everyone who checked in over lunch on Thursday and folks listening in the future. Can't wait to chat again, Joel, and looking forward to just seeing you soon and getting caught up on things. But it's a great pleasure and just great info and insights. If anyone's interested in Agility, we've been building on it for 18 years or something like that now. Reach out to Joel, Gina, the gang over there. Just a wonderful service team as well. Get yourself a trial and get in there. So signing off, I'm going to click some buttons. And Joel, thank you again.
Appreciate it, man. Take care.
Okay. Peace.